is the Pegasus Podcast, presented by Night Sports Now. UCF news, views, and a few hot takes. Now, here are your hosts, Bailey Go Knights Adams and Christian Charge On Simmons.
Welcome into episode 234. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @ByCASimmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast@ksn@gmail.com. UCF played another game. They lost another game, 38-35 at number 9 Iowa State. And I'm numb to all of it now. Even when UCF was up 35-30 with a minute 40 left and Iowa State had no timeouts and 80 yards to go, I didn't think UCF was going to win. So when they lost, I was like, yeah, I figured. But how are you, Christian?
I'm doing good. This is attempt number 2 of us recording this podcast because the only thing worse than UCF football is our internet. So I was already in a bad mood over the loss, and now it's even worse. I'm working on, just a little peeling back the curtain, I'm working on a personal thing where I get so irrationally angry when we have technical issues on this podcast that I just spiral into a rage. And I want you guys to understand that the rage you're seeing from me now is more about the internet than the game, because I, like Bailey, am largely numb to whatever the season is at this point. But we are here, we think, assuming this one works. Yeah, listen, I understand how on the surface there is an air of ridiculousness to do a podcast where you rage about your 3-3 team going on the road to a top 10 team and almost beating them and coming a few points short. But there's 2 reasons why I feel okay raging about it. The first is no one's in the mood for a moral victory. Not in year 4 of the staff, not in year 2 of the Big 12, not in a year where you thought you were going to be the big ranked team that teams were going to come play you and have to try to win. Not that you were just going to be a nothing team of this conference. And the second reason is that what does it matter at this point? They're 3-4. BYU has basically become a game now where they have to win, and BYU is probably going to be ranked in the top 10 as well because they just won and they were hovering there. And that's a game now that if you don't win, there probably is not a path to a bowl left. We're just kind of going through the motions at this point. This season is feeling listless. It's whatever that they lost, but this is now 4 straight losses. A year after we just had 5 straight losses and talked about how historic that was.
Yeah. Man, two things. One, about the internet thing and your rage against the internet. It's to the point like where you get so mad that it makes me feel like you hate me as a person, even though it's not my fault. And I know it's not my fault. I know you're not actually mad at me. You're mad at the situation, but it makes me feel like you have contempt in your heart for me.
I'm not mad at you at all.
I know.
I'm glad that none of this was recorded because I can't even I get so angry. Like, it's not healthy. Like, might need help. It's not good, but it's rough. It's just very frustrating when you're 8 minutes into a podcast and the internet goes, what if you're not anymore? What if it's over?
Yeah.
But what else is over?
So the other thing, the other thing I was going to say is the reason we're not in for moral victories, because I think moral victories you can kind of take sometimes when you feel like you're building towards something. And I don't feel like UCF is building toward anything right now. It just feels like they're more so collapsing and just falling apart at the seams. And it's going to be, at this point, it feels like it's going to be a while until they're building towards something again, because I don't think they're going to come up with the money to, I don't know. I don't know if there'd be a decision to fire him, or if Terry would even make that decision, or Cartwright or whoever, but I don't know if they'd have the money to get it together. I don't know that anything would change even if they wanted to change it. So all of that to say, like, I don't think anything's changing anytime soon. The rest of the season, like you said, we're going through the motions, and, we back at it next week. And it's hard to kind of dissect it and be like, yeah, this is what they can build on. This is what they can do here. And it's just like, yeah, this team's not, this is a very, I don't want to say, well, I don't know, I guess it is kind of a bad team. I was going to say, like, it is. I was going to say more so it's just extremely imperfect. There's a lot of flaws in this team. Like, there's some good stuff, but there's a lot of flaws. And there's a lot of flaws in this coaching staff, and I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of all of it. Yeah. And that's why I say, like, I am annoyed, and I'm sick that this is the situation we're in. But now that we're 4 losses in a row in, it's kind of turning to I expected this, so why can't I get mad at the expected result?
Well, that's the thing. And you mentioned moral victories. Can I take you down memory lane to another moral victory from past UCF?
Yeah.
You'll know where I'm going since we had this conversation before the internet broke. Where I'm taking this is last year when UCF went on the road, stop me if this sounds familiar, to play a top 10 team on the road in the midst of a losing streak when they just lost 3 games in a row. They went to number 6 Oklahoma and they almost won. They lost on one of the final plays of the game. Again, stop me if that sounds familiar to you. And after that game, we hopped on here and we did a podcast talking about how excited we were for the rest of the season. And we see the spark and we see the vision, and it feels like they figured some things out. Gus Malzahn himself said that we are going to win out from here. Those are real words that he said. And then they came home and they lost to West Virginia by double digits for their first double-digit home loss in 8 years. So that's why I'm not in this for, well, you can build off of this. There is quite literally nothing to build off of this. They played well at some points on one side of the ball. They had a couple big turnovers, some of which were correctly returned for touchdowns, some of which were not. And they almost won the game, but they didn't win. And really, that's all there is to it. There's no statement to make here. There's no what this means for anything. It's just you wish they'd won the game they hadn't. And now, a year removed from a 5-game losing streak that we mythologized this summer and talked about, like, wow, remember the 5-game losing streak? Where were you when it happened? Like, we're going to tell our grandkids about it. They're 1 game away from doing it again a year later.
Yeah.
It's a listless program. There's not even really anything emerging to try to build off of for another year with the way things currently are.
No, the best thing on the team is RJ Harvey, and he's gone after this year.
Yeah. And let me really, really quickly, RJ Harvey was excellent tonight. 25 carries, for 196 yards and 2 touchdowns, 7.8 yards a carry. Excellent. One of his best games of the season.
Yeah, and you kind of come to expect it from him. And the funny thing about you say about the Oklahoma game is I texted you at halftime, and I said, I'm sitting on a take/thought. I'm going to have to see how the second half unfolds. And you said, go on. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll tell you now. And I said, I think this is just the Oklahoma game from last year. And you said, oh, I was already thinking that. So like, it really was. It had that vibe of the same kind of parallels. And yeah, it's just, I even down to, and I made this joke to JP Gilbert because he had said there was the moment where Brandon Adams was jawing at Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach, and they were going back and forth at it. And he said, I need UCF to win this game. I can't have that moment and then UCF lose this game. And I was like, unfortunately, that was just the Javon Baker blowing a kiss at the sideline moment. Like it's
oh
the
my
same,
God,
all the way down to the same thing. It's 2 sideline moments, the sideline and top games, and it just sucks.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. And it really is. It's frustrating because one of the things we talked about that they might have been able to build off of going forward into, future games this season was if they really found a quarterback, right? Like we talked about, obviously KJ was a 5th-year senior who hadn't even had his career at UCF, but if they could get to a point where EJ emerges or Jacurri emerges, and there were points tonight where I kind of thought Jacurri had emerged. Early on, he was looking really incredible. And unfortunately, as the game went on, we kind of just started to learn why he hadn't been playing.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad when you look at the offense and the offensive stats, and they UCF's strength is going to be running the ball, and they ran for 354 yards. You do need to supplement that and complement that with some passing game, and they had 62 passing yards. Jacurri was 8 of 20 for 62 yards and 2 interceptions. Like that's not going to do it, and I don't know. It's just I don't. He has a good arm, I think. It's just I don't think he has an accurate arm at this stage, and we saw, I think they set him up for failure. And I don't understand. It goes back to the coaching staff. And I just don't understand their thought process and what the way that they piece together what they want to try to do on offense and the identity they want to have. I know they want to run the ball. I know they want to do that. Great. But when it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, okay, cool. Yeah, you usually can ask RJ Harvey to get those 3 or 4 yards. So if you want to do that, cool. But if you want to throw the ball, throw an intermediate pass, throw a little slant, throw an out route, throw something.
But
I
don't think Jacurri can hit those. There were 2 key plays that were very, very basic throws that and RJ was mad after that one. Stamping his foot on the field. And that he was going to go probably for 15 or 20 yards off of that. It was a play that worked. It was the most basic throw. I actually it's weird what you trade because I guess it's not like KJ can really throw the ball anyway. So it's not like you've lost anything there. At least Jacurri is fast and can escape, but I understand more now why they really tried to push EJ despite him being a 17-year-old, because this offense is limited if they literally cannot throw the ball. And as of now, they literally cannot throw the ball. And I don't want to put it all on Jacurri. I do want to say that it's becoming more clear that it's becoming more clear. We just know it. There's 0 depth to the wide receiver room. It is Kobe Hudson and a bunch of guys who honestly should not be on the field at the power 4 level. That sounds harsh, but that's the reality. So that's part of why I'm sort of down on the rest of the season too, you sort of hit a point where you want to talk about what they can fix or what they can do better. And there are things, for example, the 90 billion mistakes that occurred. But as far as the offense is concerned, let's just call it what it is. They don't have a quarterback. They have an O-line that is shaky and worse than it's been in recent years. They have 1 legitimate wide receiver there's nothing on the roster that's going to fix this. The offense just isn't good, and they're not going to put up points the rest of the year. That's it.
Yeah, it takes a 196-yard, 2-touchdown game from RJ for the offense to look explosive. And I mean, Jacurri had a 67-yard touchdown run himself, and he had some explosive plays on the ground. I don't want to discount that, but yeah, you're not going to get anything through the air. And when you become that one-dimensional, and I guess I don't know, can you say it's two-dimensional if you have a quarterback that runs and the running back runs? Like, you're still running the ball, but I guess at least they don't know you're becoming the service academies. I mean, the service academies are way better than you because they're both undefeated, not both, but Army and Navy are both undefeated. But I mean, you run for 354 yards and throw for 62. You pretty much, that's what you're looking like. You're running that kind of offense. And Jacurri had 154 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns on 13 carries. He averaged 11.8 yards per carry. He can do it with his legs. And maybe in the future, maybe they can figure it out. Maybe, I don't know, it wasn't his first start ever. It was his first start for UCF. Yeah. He'd started a game in Miami. But, I don't know. You hope that with time, he just kind of can figure it out. But that kind of stuff is
time, but he's a redshirt sophomore. It's not I would buy that with EJ. If you're going with EJ and saying, he'll get better, I absolutely believe EJ will get better. I mean, I think Jacurri can improve, but I think by the time you're a redshirt sophomore, you are the core of who you are at that point. There's not some explosive leap coming. And honestly, I was laughing because go ahead.
So then I only ask you, what's the point of starting him the rest of the way then? Is he UCF's quarterback of the future? Because if you don't think he is as a redshirt sophomore, I know he has a couple years left, but yeah, I know EJ is a true freshman. He's 17 years old, but just do it. I mean,
I get just do it, but also I have great news for you. If you liked watching UCF lose to a very good team on FS1, you're going to love watching them lose on ESPN, which is where they'll be playing next Saturday against BYU at 3:30.
No,
the network and time just dropped.
They're on ESPN.
UCF's going to be on ESPN when they face a likely top 10 BYU. Showcase game. We were saying that earlier this season, big noon kickoff in the Bounce House showcase game to show you're going to showcase the many empty seats because I think fans are probably close to jumping off.
I don't want to do this anymore, dude. Let me read you the replies to my tweet. I tweeted after the game. I said 4 L's in a row. See y'all next week at the Bounce House. I have 6 replies, maybe 7. I have LMAO, and then I have maybe. And then I have be there for number 5. So at least Tom Johnson will be there. So cool. We got that.
Nice.
We've got Fire Gus Malzahn says 5 straight L's on the way. Then you got another guy that said nah. And then I had another guy. It's my favorite one. His name's Kyle Collins. He says, I got 2 tickets for sale in section 132 if you want them. I'll take 2 ham sandwiches for the pair. So yeah, that's where we are.
There's a good deal right there, guys, if you're looking for tickets to the game. So
he didn't even ask for cheese. It's just a ham. So you put a slice of ham on bread and give them to that guy, and you've got 2 tickets to the game that's going to be on ESPN.
That's exciting for sure. But yeah, it's tough. We're going to have to figure out what we really want to talk about on these podcasts going forward because this is uncharted territory for us. Honestly, as a podcast, we started at the best time to start a podcast, which was right when they hired Gus. We didn't mean to do that. I think we started it. Our second episode was about Danny White leaving. Then our third episode was Josh Heupel leaving.
First one was Danny White leaving, I think.
So that's, the way that goes. But I mean, this is a weird point to be in because I guess the only thing you're even sort of left to pray for here is bowl eligibility, whatever that's worth. I don't think it's worth much of anything at this point. And I don't really, the path to it isn't really necessarily there. There aren't a lot of winnable games left. West Virginia has looked pretty bad. Arizona's looked pretty bad. Those are 2. I don't know where the third comes from. He probably needs to be BYU, Arizona State. But it's just frustrating because, and I know we've said this on the last few podcasts, but it's just felt more true week by week. The Gus era kind of feels over. And it's a weird boat to be in where you have an era of the coach that feels over and there's really nothing the school can do to move on from that. And so it's kind of just in Gus's hands.
You're just dead.
Be back here next year. And honestly, if I was Gus Malzahn, I'd be back next year. He's making $5 million. $5 million a year. If I'm terrible at a job and being paid $5 million, I'd be back too. It's the boat they're in now. And yeah, so I guess that's why it's almost like what you want to see next week. Do you just root for, I don't know, EJ to play? And I do have to say that as the season goes on,
you just root for them to lose enough and Gus to get frustrated and be like, all right, I'm out.
I don't know. I mean, you are seeing more and more of the young guys are starting to creep in now. Andrew Harris had a huge play on special teams. Isaiah Nixon was playing a lot before he had a injury. Christian Peterson was returning kicks. Like the younger guys
broke up a pass in the end zone.
Chase and Johnson broke it past the end zone. The younger guys are trickling into the lineup now, which you can look at two ways. The positive way to look at it is they're making strides and gains and they're getting better. The negative way to look at it would be the season is over, so screw it. Like those are the two different angles you can take. And I guess we root for that, but can we do a little talk about issues with the coaching staff really quickly here?
Yeah, of course.
I was very frustrated that a lot of this game and UCF eventually losing it was defined by, it wasn't always defined by Iowa State being very good. I want to be clear. That's a very good team. I feel like we make a mistake sometimes as podcasters, as fans, where everything is from our perspective of, well, UCF, why didn't they do this? Or they could have done this better. How did they screw up that play? A lot of what happened in this game, particularly to the defense, who I thought at times, despite giving up 30 plus points and 500 yards, actually had a solid game at times. A lot of it was just Rocco Becht is a really freaking good quarterback and you can do everything right. And he still just might find a way to make a play out of it. But I can't get over how many mistakes occurred in this game, basic avoidable mistakes. And one or two of those happen because these are kids playing football. Once you're up to a billion of them through this season and through 4 years, it's hard to not blame the staff. I mean, just tonight we had a player runs into the kicker on a 4th down for Ohio State. We had Braden Marshall has a pick six, except it's not a pick six because in the most annoying play that exists in all of college football, he for no reason just drops the ball before going into the end zone. We had a Brandon Adams pass interference call, and I don't want to hear that, that was absolutely pass interference, a pass interference call on Iowa State's drive that basically handed them the touchdown to win the game. And then for the second game in a row, when UCF is on their final drive trying to get down the field and score, they have a false start on the offensive line. And like I said, one or two of those happens because it's college football. Once we're up to a ton of these every game, it has to go back to the staff, right?
Yeah, it's not a well-coached team. And again, like you say, it can be a few and you're like, it's hard to blame, the coaches for an individual mistake. But when it's so widespread, it's like, okay. And again, it's one of those things, it's like, I feel like it's probably easier to say like, hey, they should be coaching these guys better. But like, this is stuff that these guys know they're not supposed to do. I don't really know what the solution is, but yeah, like it always reflects when you're a poorly disciplined team or an undisciplined team, it reflects on the coaching staff. So that does fall on their shoulders. That's their responsibility. And this team, and again, I kind of want to go back and look at it because it looked like, and this is probably minor in the grand scheme of things because they were going to score anyway, but on the go-ahead touchdown, the game-winning touchdown, did the defense think that they were going to spike the ball? Because I don't think a lot of those guys were set.
I'd have to go look. I'm not sure.
It didn't look like they were ready for them to run the play. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just whatever. But
honestly, you look at this game, and part of what was discouraging about this game is your UCF, and like it's so hilarious to think that as recently as like a month and a half ago, there was a good chunk of the fan base that thought this was a team that could win the Big 12, and we ourselves thought this was a team that could go 8-4, and they're just not. They're worse than they were last year, and I think where that hurts more than anywhere is when you're in this game and you're watching the team you're playing and all the talent Iowa State has everywhere and the dynamic quarterback they have. And yeah, UCF almost won. And honestly, part of it was Iowa State's offense was having kind of a weirdly disjointed night. There were times where they just weren't, Becht was not connecting with his receivers. Things were a little
20
off.
of 46.
They just weren't, they were just like not getting in rhythm and he was having to escape a lot. But it's just, you look at where that team is with its talent to be a top 10 team and you look at where UCF is and they don't feel close. It doesn't feel like there's anything that can happen in this offseason where they'd be that next year. And I guess it's just the question becomes when you're in year 4 of this staff, what are you building towards? Look at BYU. BYU is undefeated right now and is probably going to be in the top 10. Look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati beat Arizona State, is now 5-2. SMU won again today. All these other G5 teams that moved up are already beginning to replicate the success that they had at the G5 level as UCF just fades further and further into irrelevance. And my question is, as an administration, I know that you can't fire Gus. I know that money isn't there, but as an administration, at what point do you sit him down and just say, how are you feeling about spending more time with the family? I don't know I don't know what you do, but it just, at what point do you make clear to him that the preference would be for him to not be back next year? I can't imagine at this point in time, UCF's admin and Mahajer still think that he and this staff are the right people to be leading the organization because there is quite literally no roadmap to success at this point in time. There is no plan.
I agree with you. Again, this is maybe a conversation. We've hinted at it and talked about it a little bit, but it's one of those things that comes back around if Gus does retire or leave or whatever. I don't trust Terry to make a good hire after it. I don't know. Why should I feel confident in his ability to hire the next head coach and make things better? I don't know. I'm just kind of at a loss with the whole administration and the direction of this program. And this is without even getting into all of the rest of the athletics programs where, like, this has been the worst fall ever for all these UCF programs that are historically good. They've been good in recent years. And it's just everyone's bad now, and everything feels just bad. I don't know.
what an uplifting podcast. I don't know what we could say. Like,
there's nothing like with someone. I don't remember. It was maybe us, or I think we might have even branded. You might have branded our podcast this week, but like sarcastically, this is an uplifting.
Let's do
podcast.
the Hopium podcast. Yeah.
What are we supposed to do? Like, I don't know. What do you want me to tell you? Like, I'm just sitting here. I don't know. I'm just gonna get my jokes off, and that's it. Like, I don't.
The boat to be in now is. You hope they find a way to a bowl. You hope they beat BYU to get to 4-4, and then they try to find 2 more from there, and that's kind of boat. But they're 1 or 2 more losses away from even a bowl game clearly being off the table. And at that point, I don't really know what you do. I don't know what you talk about, and I don't think it's as simple as start EJ Colson and hope that gets the fan base on board, because EJ Colson is 17 years old. There's 2 issues with that. One is that he's gonna play badly. And that's fine. That's just what happens when you're a true freshman, let alone, I don't even know what he is, like a true freshman squared, since he's like a year away from being a true freshman. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, it's not always just about if they have experience, they'll improve. I mean, you have to be careful that you don't ruin his development by throwing too much at him at once. And so it's not like that's just a done deal either. There's also no guarantee that he is the next Mackenzie Milton or the next Dylan Gabriel, the next whatever. You're hoping he is, but there's no guarantee of that. So it's just, I mean, it's one thing I know we've talked about in past podcasts. It's become more clear lately and more clear tonight is, if I ask you the simple question, what's the identity of this team? What is it?
Run the football.
So just run, and they can still be stopped running the ball. It's so strange to be in year 4 of a staff and not have more than really one player you can even convince the fan base that you're building around, and also not really have an identity, and also be actively regressing from year to year. I mean, it is that bleak right now.
No, it is. And that's the thing, too. It's like, you say all that about EJ, and like, if you threw him out there, even if he's like looking pretty like promising, you don't have any receivers outside of Kobe Hudson and Randy Pittman. So it's like, you're not doing him any favors. You're just throwing him into an awful situation. And what does that do to him mentally? Like, what? Yeah. Like, as much as you can be confident in your abilities, you get thrown out there at the age of 17 with not much help around you other than a good run game. Like, and that's just the whole thing was confusing. And I don't want to go back to Cincinnati, but you throw EJ out there, and then I think he was like had 4 passing attempts. So it's like you're not even giving him a chance to get his feet wet and actually do anything to help his development. They were trying to give the team a spark by putting EJ Colson in there to hand the ball off a bunch. Yeah, like, I don't even understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And like, I don't think anything this coaching staff really does makes any sense. Like, it feels like they're just kind of like, yeah, we'll try this, and then it doesn't work. I'm like, oh, well, we can get back together and try this next week. And it's just none of it makes sense. None of it matters.
Gus also declared this week that they were going to have a 2-quarterback system going forward. Then EJ, I think, played 1 snap this game, and it was because Ja'Cory's helmet came off.
I thought you were going to say, I thought you were looking at your phone. I thought you were going to say Gus said all their goals were still in front of him.
I haven't even seen his post-game stuff yet. Apologies on that. No, I was looking at my phone because I'm looking through some past recruiting classes, because you said something and I want to dive a little farther into it. You said they don't have any receivers outside of Kobe Hudson. I want to be clear that it's not like Gus looked at the roster and said, dang, we don't have any. That's an indictment on this staff. Yeah. There is no state, literally probably no state in the entire country better for skill talent than the state of Florida. And UCF in its history, all the way back to when it was in the MAC, or he has an FBS team, has never had a difficult time having really good to great wide receivers on the roster. Everyone from the true greats like Gabe Davis or Traquan Smith to Brandon Marshall to Marlon Williams to Trey Nixon. I mean, this has literally, to Ryan O'Keefe even, I mean, this has never been a problem to have multiple good wide receivers. And it is such an indictment on this staff that in year 4, they have somehow put together a wide receiver room where there is only one wide receiver on the roster who has any business starting a game at the Power 4 level. And you look at their recruiting classes, it's their big wide receiver recruit is Quan Lee. He's gone after a year. They go after guys like Tyree Patterson. They never make it on the field. I mean, it's like, where was the recruiting on this? Did they just think, we'll find him in the portal? And because that's worked so well for the staff over the last 2 years, is just plucking guys out of the portal?
That's what's so weird. So I look back to year 1, and they got Brandon Johnson, who I think he led the team in touchdowns, and that was a good portal get. Obviously, Javon and Kobe, great. But, yeah, they've had horrible luck the last 2 years. I don't know, luck is, throwing that word out there. But I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to look at this roster and be like, he doesn't have much to work with. It's his roster. He put it together. Yeah. It's year 4, and as well as they've recruited in terms of rankings, in terms of star ratings, whatever you want, and by any metric, they're recruiting great, but none of it's translating to the field. Yeah. We're not seeing any of that yet, and I think by now we should see some of it. Like it's sad. Like it's the state of the roster being worse than it was 3 years ago is crazy to me.
It's hilarious to me that if you just, it's like, it feels like if you just handed right now the 2021 roster, that roster would probably be having more success. It's kind of insane to think about. And that's not true across the board. There are definitely positions where they've upgraded. Like D-line is, even though it's had struggles this year, there are just guys on D-line, athletes they did not have at the G5 level. But you talked about luck with the portal. And I want to be clear about something. Sure, you can call it luck if you want, but I get the portal is still relatively new. We're like 4 or 5 years into that being a thing, and everyone sort of had to learn how to use it. But what's become clear, not just at UCF, but across the country, look at what's happened to FSU right now, is the strategy of we're going to go find like 10 guys to start from the portal. It's just not tenable, and it doesn't work. Teams that do this are failing. And I don't want to come out and be a hypocrite, because when UCF was landing all these guys this offseason, I was excited about a lot of them. We had podcasts about a lot of them, and I thought it was good. I thought it was working, but I'm not the one being paid $5 million a year to figure this out. And after the last season they had, where they went hard into the portal to try to upgrade the roster and missed on all these guys, and then it happens again this year, it's just frustrating we're here, because we call it misses like it's recruiting, but I think at some point you just have to acknowledge that it's just hard to get a lot of guys out of the portal who are going to work. So it's frustrating to know that they're once again here. And I guess going into this offseason, the question is their pitch to the fan base going to be, look at all these transfers we're going to go get? Is anyone going to buy that?
They shouldn't. And there's no reason to believe that, they're going to remake this whole roster in one off season. It's going to be great, because they haven't proven they can do that. Yeah. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just keep saying, that's pretty much it. This was a night. It was frustrating. Hopefully they beat BYU. I don't know what else there is to say on it. You think it's bad now. I don't think the most likely outcome is Gus leaving. I think the most likely outcome is he's the coach here next year. And I don't know what this offseason is going to look like. I would expect, if he does stay, I would expect dramatic staff changes, which we just did. But
We did that.
And maybe Gus will actually go, hire people for these positions who are the most qualified and the best choices, or maybe he will do what he was doing at Auburn in 2020, all the way to last offseason, hire more guys he's worked with before who are retreads and are not the best fits. So we'll just have to wait and find out.
It's a definition of insanity, and it's not going to get better, but we'll be back. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say, or should I
Gold helmets look good.
Yeah, they did. They look great. At least UCF was one of the 2 teams that was actually wearing their school colors tonight. That's great.
Nice. Can we take that shot after UCF were black and white the entire season?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying for once it was nice that the one team of the 2 that was wearing their school colors was UCF, because we got used to that not being them. Then it's funny, they broke out the gold helmets, and then Iowa State was like, "What if we wear our black and white? We love it." It's crazy. I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point, and I'm ready to get out of here. I'm ready to go to sleep. I'm ready to stop thinking about UCF for the next few days, even though I don't think I can ever really do that. That's the curse of all of this, is like, I want to unplug and I want to get away from all of it, but I just can't. And that's part of it's the podcast. Part of it's just my brain, and I care too much, and it's great. I love it. Wow. It's a great time. But hey, we'll be back with another podcast early in the week. And then I'm excited, because I am going to get to go to Orlando and get to hang out with you, and it'll be great. The game might not be great. Still can't believe it's on ESPN. That's going to take a minute for me to process. This was even worse. This was even bleaker than this week's podcast, which I didn't think was really possible, but we did it. So, all right, let's get out of here. We'll be back with episode 235. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at @CA_Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.